So often we talk about buying a home as being like the core of the American dream, but I think that part of the American dream is the hope that the kids you have, the generation that comes after you, will have more opportunities than you did. And when we talk about the American dream, college usually falls underneath that umbrella. We talk about parents should have a college fund, parents taking out 401k loans in order to provide for their kids' college. So this isn't me trying to bash on college or say that it's a scam because I also went to college. So if I was to say it was a scam, that means that I totally fell for it. And honestly, my degree and that entire process was very difficult. It was not as traditional as it might be for other people, but I graduated and my career has panned out pretty good since then. I think that right now, though, we're seeing a big shift in the job market and in the job economy and what value a degree even has for a lot of the jobs that are out there. So I'm going to walk through three different articles that I found about how Gen Z graduating college are really struggling to find new jobs or to find their first job right after college. So this one's an interesting one from Fortune, and it breaks down like not only just Gen Z and the difference of generations across the years with job opportunities available with a degree, but it also addresses the difference between women getting degrees versus men. So Gen Z men with college degrees now have the same unemployment rate as non-graduates, a sign that the higher education payoff is dead. And this is from July of 2025. So this is a couple months ago. Gen Z is increasingly slamming their degrees as useless, and new research indicates there may be some truth when it comes to the job hunt. It's a struggle to break into the entry-level job market, but young male college graduates may be hurting the most. The most recent data from the Federal Reserve indicates that the unemployment rate among recent college graduates is on the rise at about 5.5%, although it remains lower than the 6.9% rate among all young workers between 22 and 27 years old. And all that's saying is that you're still more likely to get hired because you have a degree. But when you look at the 6.9 versus that 5.5, it's not a large spread. Like it doesn't give you a huge boost like having a degree used to, maybe in the 70s, 80s, 50s. And then going into it even more, men with a college degree now have roughly the same unemployment rate as young men who didn't go to college. So they're basically toe to toe. Like the gap that you would expect to see between this 5.5 and the 6.9 isn't there. In comparison, around 2010, non-college graduated men experienced unemployment rates over 15%, whereas the rate among college graduates was closer to 7%. And if we're thinking about like just what was going on in time in the economy around 2010, it was right after the financial crisis, the housing market bubble burst, and it was a lot harder to get jobs. Like the entire economy, all the employment opportunities, it really shrunk in response to that. And so non-college graduates had 15%, whereas college graduates were still closer to 7. So that's just another example of like how large that spread is depending on what timeline. Like here we are, like we don't even know if this is fully recessionary times, right? But the spread between the value and like how hireable you are with a degree versus without a degree is much tighter. So it's starting to show it doesn't make much of a difference whether you have a degree or not when you're getting hired. And then when it starts to talk about young men and women are facing diverging employment rates, while 7% of college-educated American men are unemployed, for women, this drops around to 4%. That is super interesting. And it says over the next decade, healthcare occupations are projected to grow much faster than the rate for all occupations, translating to about 1.9 million openings per year. And I can kind of see that. I think that women are more attracted to the field of nursing. And it's kind of like if you think about Meet the Fockers, where if you're a male nurse, you kind of get made fun of. And honestly, in reality, if you're any kind of nurse, I think people really value that. But there's almost like this stigma that we carry in ourselves of, oh, because I'm a man, I'm not supposed to be a nurse. The same way, like, if I'm a woman, I don't think I should be an engineer. And we're moving away from that, of course. But this article specifically is showing that, like, women do choose career paths and degrees that are very specific around women's interest. And it's true, like, a lot of books will point this out too. And Thomas Sowell has a great book out there about it, how just women and men have different interests naturally. Like there are less women that are in the engineering field because a lot of women don't necessarily think in that manner. Like they're majority, and I'm not trying to be sexist because I am a woman, but a lot of women gear towards things where they feel like they're helping people. They're much more leaning towards like ambivalent or charitable causes. They care about different things than men do, and that's totally fine. but you're really starting to see it in employment opportunity and even in the relation to going to college for it. Women tend to be more flexible in accepting job offers, even if they're not perfectly aligned with their career goals or are part-time or they are overqualified for. Men, on the other hand, often hold out for roles that align more closely with their ideal career path or offer what they perceive as adequate compensation and status. And that is such an interesting difference in like the psychology of men and women when we're doing the job hunt also, because I know that a lot of times I forgot who said it, but women will not apply for a job online unless they feel like they fit 100% of the listed requirements. For men, if they feel like they can fulfill 60%, then they'll still apply for the job. And so for women, they have to feel like they're totally prepared. This is the right fit for me. Versus with men, they're always, especially in job applications, trying to reach a little bit higher for that next level, which isn't such a bad thing. But in terms of hiring, unfortunately, it's starting to be a blockage to their own potential of getting a job and at least getting their foot in the door to start their career. Okay, and some other changing trends that this article points out. Part of this shift may be credited to the rise in skilled trade career paths, which tend to be male dominated. Some young people have seen the writing on the wall and decided to change paths. The overall share of young college students has declined by about 1.2 million between 2011 and 2022, according to Pew Research Center analysis. But this decline has had a stark gender divide, with which there are about 1 million fewer men and about 200,000 fewer women students. So we're obviously noting there's a trend of decreasing number of people wanting to go to college, and young people wanting to go to college, but additionally, the ratio of men to women that are just going away from college entirely, it is a huge divide. So like 1 million men compared to 200,000 fewer women going to school. And I mean, it makes sense because the next part of this article is talking about how men are pursuing skilled trade career paths, which tend to be male dominated. That is very, and honestly, like we need trade. Like we need people that are capable of like fixing homes, from top to bottom, doing car work. Like those are things that I still think AI will have a really hard time replacing. Just having somebody come to your house, repair your roof, fix your toilet. We don't really have robots that can completely replace the services that human beings are doing. And so I think that if someone's going to trade school, that's awesome. Like even if you don't go to college whatsoever, that's awesome. So the next article that I found was from Business Insider. Gen Z college grads hitting the job market at the worst time. And just to preface this a little bit, I remember in 2008, there was this thing that was going around. Like it was a statistic that was released where if you enter the job market, you get your first job during a recession, then it naturally sets you up for the rest of your life to be making less than people who started their career paths after a recession. During a recession, it's a lot of cost cutting. Like they can pay you less. Everybody's looking for a job, so you'll take whatever pay you can get. And that's kind of what it is right now with how difficult it is to find a new job, how high unemployment is becoming. Like if you're able to get a job, they're probably getting a discount on your salary. Like the number of CPAs or accountants that got laid off from the government when the IRS was doing the Doge cuts. Now, in the industry of finance and accounting, the average value for an accountant or like a CPA, specifically a CPA that's certified in accounting, they're so valuable that on average, the minimum you would expect as a CPA would be $100,000 because they're rare, the credentials are hard to get. But right now, I know that there are CPAs out there that are accepting jobs for $70,000, $60,000. There are people that used to be CFOs that are now working for less than $100,000, which is more than 50% pay cut, huge pay cuts, because people just need a job. And if there's so many people out there that can do this skill, it's just a ratio of the supply versus the demand. There's only so many people that are hiring, and if the government's not hiring, then there's just a huge supply. And if there's an abundant supply, they can cut the price and the value for those roles. Unfortunate, but it's just true. Okay, so back to this Business Insider article. Gen Z faces a tough job market with higher unemployment and fewer openings than in the past few years. So it points out economic uncertainty and AI are disrupting entry-level jobs. Many Gen Zers are pursuing blue-collar jobs as they question the return on investment of a college degree. A lot of the grad students are feeling desperate. It's a tough hiring market. Economic uncertainty has contributed to employees' wariness to quit and companies' hesitancy to hire. Artificial intelligence is disrupting the entry-level rung of the career ladder in industries like tech. Recent graduates have told Business Insider that they are frustrated by hundreds of rejected applications and being ghosted by prospective employers. Some are settling for whatever work they can find. It's long been typical for 20-somethings to have a higher unemployment rate than the general population. And the overall US unemployment rate is still relatively low. One relatively new development, however, is that young people with college degrees are being hit hard by the economic slowdown, especially if they are hoping to land a role in a traditionally white-collar field. And I think that's one thing that's interesting. Like, I'm not certified or important enough to tell people that we are in a recession, but if we are, and we very likely may be right now, the fact that it's both blue collar and white collar jobs that are being affected is kind of mind blowing. Like, yeah, during 2008, that makes sense. There was a lot of companies that were going under. Like people, if people are like moving out of their houses in droves, that means there's less home building, there's less demand for home repairs, and that makes sense. Blue collar and white collar around 2008, that kind of makes sense. But right now, I think we're seeing especially more white collar jobs getting removed and just wiped out from the market because we're almost realizing that after 2020, we overhired for a lot of roles and we overhire, we pay them too much. And now a lot of companies are like, if somebody quits, they might not be rehiring for that role again. If like there's not as many promotions going around. They'd rather hire someone from the outside because they can probably get them for cheaper. And there's a huge change that's going on in like the white collar work field. Like whether you're in accounting, whether you are doing a tech job, whatever job that it is where you sit behind a desk, something is changing. And I think that a lot of the white collar functions, especially if you're a college graduate, a recent college grad, a lot of those functions can probably be replaced and done by AI, which is also horrifying to think about. More people are graduating with a bachelor's degree than in the past. Even as the cost of higher education has risen, more people are getting a bachelor's degree at US schools, which means more qualified competition for the available jobs. And that's what I mean. It's just the more people that have a college degree, like the whole point of high school, and this will sound shady, but it's just kind of true. Like the original schools that were created, they were, publicly funded and established, and the learning criteria for every class was structured around how can you go into a work plant? How can you go into a warehouse, a factory, and you're going to have some education level where you can actually be a contributing member. And it's crazy to think about that in the US that we didn't have public education specifically for the purpose of we want a smarter society. We started schools so we could have workers, like it was a worker society. And that worked when we were a manufacturing country. But right now we're moving into service type of roles, which means there's less manufacturing. And I know that Trump's trying to bring that back into the picture in the United States. Like high school was supposed to essentially be like this baseline education level where you're able to go into the workforce, you can do what you need to do, you can write, read, do math, the basics. And I think that, bachelor's was supposed to be like, okay, if you have a bachelor's or if you went to college, then you're immediately supposed to move up into a manager role. And that's kind of how it was treated in the American psyche for so long. But now it's kind of like a bachelor's degree has been like the replacement for that baseline level of education. It used to just be high school degree or GED. Like you're right there, you're on par with what the rest of the country is expected to know. If you go above that, it's supposed to be like, okay, we're supposed to compensate you as a society for being a more valuable person. But the value of a college degree has gone down so much because there are more people than ever that have a college degree in this country. Like let me pull up a graph for you. Okay, this graph is from statista.com. Love the name. And essentially, like, this is by percentage of population. So this is a graph from Statista, and it breaks down, this is the high school graduate or, higher degree than that. That's the blue line. The black line is a college graduate or above that. So it could be doctorate, PhD. And if we look at 1960, only 7.7% of the US population had a college degree. And then only 41.1% was actually finishing high school. Go to, let's see, where we, 1998, we kind of stabilize a little bit. We have like an average of 82.8 and just increasing number of people that are finishing high school, which is huge and great compared to only 41.1%. And it, again, we're a smarter population for it. That's awesome. But then if you look at the college graduate number, we went from 7.7 and then in 1990, 19.4%. That's more than more than it doubled within a 30-year time frame. And then if it goes from the 1990 to 2002, we were at about 37.5%. So if you think about it, we're in 2025 today, and I'm sure that there's been a little bit of a drop off of people going to college or graduating from college. Maybe, maybe not. But let's think about that. It's around 37%. So like a third of our population has a college degree. And if at baseline, like let's say maybe 80% of them are just bachelor's degrees, to say just bachelor's degrees, crazy statement. 30% compared to the 7.7. It's not that rare. It's the supply has grown vastly. And so it makes me think about places like Korea, where I know that in Korea, having a bachelor's degree is basically their version of a high school diploma. Everyone has a bachelor's degree. And above that, the next step is like a master's, a doctorate. That's where you can really start to compete for those higher paying jobs, for like that really successful status type of roles you're looking for, like being a CFO or being a director. You're basically required to have those degrees. It's not just about who you know. And and so it's just a matter of like the supply and demand. Like we have so many college graduates that the actual value for them has declined. Job market for college grads, worst in a decade. It's not all AI's fault. And I mean, it's hard to find a job. Like even for someone like me, for a lot of my peers who have incredible experience, people that are more experienced than I am, they're also struggling to find jobs. And a lot of that is just the weird job market that we're in. And a lot of people think that it's because we overhired in 2020. When money was cheap, we could afford to bring on as many people as possible. And now that it's kind of money's much tighter than it used to be, in terms of like the people aren't spending as much money as they used to. Interest rates are high, so it's really hard to borrow money, or it's more expensive to borrow money. So the result of that is that you have a lot of people that are kind of stuck in this position. They can't really move up or down. There's not really anywhere for these college grads to go. And and even for me, like in a software company, one of my concerns is AI. Like we're learning about AI every day. We're told to implement it in some function in our work every single day. And that's great to be in a learning environment that's cultivating that. But at the same time, you still can't get over the thought that, am I training my future replacement? And so let's look at this article. It used to be that if you went to college and worked hard, you would find a job and place in the American middle class. But that school to career pipeline appears to be breaking down. Now, 6.6 of college educated 20 to 24-year-olds are unemployed and actively job hunting. That's the highest unemployment rate for young college grads in a decade, apart from the COVID pandemic lows. Um, so 10 years, a 10-year window, and it's gotten that much harder. And if we think 10 years ago it was 2005, like why would it be hard for people in 2005 to be able to get a job? But I don't know. It's like maybe it's an association with that graph, like the volume of people, the number of opportunities, the growth. It's just a supply and demand equation. But specifically right now, um, he adds that simultaneously, some employers are seeing what jobs, particularly entry level, can be done by artificial intelligence. The tech is also the first to filter out applications submitted by real life prospective employees, many of whom are using AI to fill out their applications and resumes in the first place. Isn't that crazy? Like, we're using AI to create our resumes, help us fill out applications, but then on the other end of it, it's also AI that's like scanning and screening us before they actually put us in front of another person. Like we have really overcomplicated this process of just getting a job. Companies increasingly are of the position that they are not going to invest in just taking young people who come in with general knowledge and providing them with many of the skills that they need in certain types of positions. This onus now is increasingly on that young person. And I really agree with this. Like, I think that the issue with a lot of these college degrees and why so many people are graduating, but they're not able to find the job, that their dream job right out the gates, a lot of that is because they studied something that doesn't actually give them hard skills that relate to their job. Like I think that in nursing, right? Like you're required to do some advanced biology, advanced calculus, like it's really difficult math, and I don't necessarily know if you're doing the calculus on your day job as a nurse, but that level of education makes sense. In accounting, depending what school you go to, because sometimes accounting is a bachelor's of arts instead of a bachelor's of science. So weird. But anyways, a bachelor's of arts degree is not as valuable as a bachelor's of science degree. You both studied accounting, you probably know the exact same things, but if your degree is a bachelor's of science, that means that it was more catered to actual, you would be able to go into a job and do the primary functions for it. So when I think of like degrees like sociology or English, it's not that they're useless. It's not like that information doesn't have value in our society. The issue is that there is no practical skills that you can bring to a business a lot of times that will give them value. And I think that like in this article, what he's essentially saying is like the most valuable skill I have found in my career is the ability to teach yourself. The skill of teaching yourself something rather than relying on someone to tell you to do it, rather than relying on like an online course or a college course or like when the first thing that comes to your mind is I don't know how, you better be the person, the most valuable people in the job market are the people that say, I will figure it out. Like, I will figure it out. It's not, I'm going to pay for a college or a college course to figure it out. I'm gonna, it's like you have to be resourceful. And that's really what they're looking for in the job market. And I think that college degrees, unfortunately, don't do a good job of capturing how resourceful a person is. Like, yeah, you have the basic education, you know the industry or the field, but how useful is that education in actually doing your job? Like, for example, I was telling my friend this. I think a lot of times we go to college, we learn about a bunch of different stuff, and when we go in front of an employer and they say, "What can you do?" The answer is like, well, I can work a computer. I know how to use an email. I know how to use Word, but the actual technical skills that they would need, it's something that you have to learn in job a lot of times. And so for me, I got an internship. That was a huge help in just opening the door. And on my internship, I was working in accounts receivable, realized I did not like accounts receivable. I did not want to do collections, but part of that, like you're just doing the things you don't want to do, it gives you that fundamental understanding, like piece by piece through every role, what your actual like degree is. Like your degree kind of sets like this cement foundation to a house. And my internship was like one wall being built with like windows in it. And then my next role as a financial analyst built another wall. And then as the more experience you get in actual world that ties to your college degrees, the deeper the knowledge and what you've learned will actually become cemented. Because when you're just in college, a lot of times the subjects, the topics that you're studying are these abstract, invisible things. Like you're memorizing how to do these formulas for accounting, or you're memorizing a definition of something, but until you're actually in the role and you're seeing like, oh, depreciation or like amortization schedules, those things are invisible until you're in the actual job. And so I understand what they're saying of like the skills that they need, like it's only general knowledge you're getting from college. But having actual skills is hard to come by. You have to cultivate those on your own, or you have to be blessed to have an employer that will take their time to teach you these skills. He continues. This is one of the critical mismatches. You have educators who are much more focused on helping to provide young people with broad base of learning, and they view the real responsibility of job-specific training being on the employer. Half of employers we surveyed said schools aren't providing enough skill-building programs to create job-ready candidates. And that's a valid point. Like you again, what I was saying is like you have to have the actual skills to go into something. Like when so my degree is in Bachelor's of Science Accounting, and we did a full book close. So we went from like the beginning of a sale, like a set of transactions, to all the way to how do each of those transactions flow into a financial statement, closing the book at the end of the year. We went through like some business tax return scenarios, and those are real skills. And I'm happy because I'm happy for them, but they were incredibly difficult at the time. And so I understand when they're saying like they want people with actual skills coming out of college. Sensible ask. They're not waiting for the adults to catch up. They're trying to figure it out on their own, and many of them say the content they're engaging with is actually inspiring them and helping them. Yet we also know that sometimes that content can be less constructive in their lives, so it's a double-edged sword. Every occupation that exists will be impacted by AI. And okay, and so this guy says essentially what I was just saying through the beginning of this. People need to bring specific skills when entering the job market, and everyone must be a lifelong learner because their knack today might not be relevant 5 to 15 years later. That is very true. Whatever you think that you might have found a specialization in, there is always somebody else who can do it better. Um, like the job market really is in a state of like high competition right now, and I get a lot of people may not want to compete. Like I'm not very competitive over jobs. Like I'm not trying to become a CFO one day. It would be cool. It would be cool, but I'm not trying to like be a director. Like that's not really my prerogative of like career mapping. But I also realize that it's like, to my earlier point of like, you have to be somebody that will always be learning and can teach themselves things. That ability to be proactive with a lot of requests, to kind of see what's coming up in the future without your employer asking you to do something. Those are really rare traits in an employee. And so if you can be that for an employer, if you can present yourself as like, look, I'm proactive, you don't have to ask me to do things. Like I will figure out what needs to get done. If something goes wrong, I will take accountability and fix it. You shouldn't think that these traits are that hard to find in the job market, but they really are. Certain skills change really quickly. Like for example, accounts payable and accounts receivable. There are entire departments like designed and devoted to this. But a lot of accounts receivable becomes so automated. A lot of accounts payable has become automated through systems, through programs, to the point where you don't need somebody to sit there and go, approved, let's pay Microsoft, approved, let's pay Google. It comes a point where you don't have that anymore, and it's just a system that will automatically review these things, recognize, yep, that's the same as last month, approved, approved. The work that it would take somebody to do in a week, an AI or computer software can do it within 15 minutes. And that's the wave of technology, and that's, what this man here in this article is really trying to point out. Oh, Starbucks. I didn't know he was associated with Starbucks. Okay. So to put this entire conversation to a close, essentially, I got a college degree. It was hard. I cried. It took a lot longer than it should have. But when I graduated, I only graduated with $9,000 of student loan debt. The rest, I had worked my whole way through college. And that's why it took me so long, was because I decided to pay for it instead of going into debt to go to college. I think the general rule of thumb is if you want to go to college, I have no issue with that. I think that the more information that you have, the better decisions that you can make in life. But if you're going to college specifically because you want to get into a career or you want to do some specific career path, make sure that the average entry level salary for that job is the cost of all of your tuition. So let's say that it costs you $50,000 to get an accounting degree. If you're not making at least $50,000 your first year, like the expected, like just go look online. Like what is the expected first year salary for someone that's got an accounting degree or goes into financial analytics, whatever. If it's not $50,000, let's say it's $40,000, you might want to pick another major. And I think that what's unfortunate is that, even in high school, there were so many counselors, like we had teachers that would do whole seminars like mid-class about here's how you fill out your FAFSA, here's how you basically go into debt before you can even sign for a credit card. You're 17 years old, getting told to sign up for FAFSA, get into debt, and just go to college and study something you care about and you're passionate about. There's nothing wrong with that. You should be passionate about whatever it is that you're studying. But just know that, like, if you choose to drop out, you're still obligated to that debt. If you graduate, but you graduate with a degree that is essentially not in demand, I'm going to say that nicely. It's just the degree, whatever you studied is not in demand. The chances of you being able to pay it off and have a successful life, you're just delaying yourself a little bit because of that debt, because you're limiting your career opportunities. And I get that having a bachelor's does open more doors. Like from the articles we read, having a bachelor's opens more doors for you than not having one. But that gap is closing. And so if you're trying to just make money, maybe going to skills to a trade school will be good for you. Doesn't matter if you're a girl trying to do plumbing or a guy that wants to do hair, who cares? Like there's jobs. Like how many like I don't see robots cutting hair still. Like all I'm saying is that there's so many different career paths, there's so many different trajectories with between like AI or college. Will it be valuable in the future? Will we just all start getting masters? Will they have to re-standardize high school education so that way it's basically like we get the first 2 years of, college degree while we're in high school? I don't know. But eventually something's going to have to change because when the incentive to go to college is being diminished because there's not enough white collar jobs to hire them because there's so many people that already have bachelor's degrees, it becomes harder to compete. Um, all I can say is that for you, just you as an individual, keep building your skills, stay hungry to learn things, become somebody that doesn't have to be told to go and learn something or to go figure something out. You are the person that wants to go to find answers. Just become that naturally, deeply curious person in whatever field you're in whatever job you're doing. Just devote to doing your best in it. I still think that college was worth it for me. I'm very happy with college. I cried in my car for like 5 minutes before I went in to go and finish my final exams for on my senior year of college because it was that hard. It was that stressful. And I still think like, oh, should I get an MBA because it'll create more job opportunities for me? For some people, it might make sense to. It might make sense to go and get higher education. But for me personally, I don't necessarily think that I need it because I think just again, having that like learner can do attitude, it takes you a long way. But yeah, if you've watched this far in the video, thank you. Maybe share it with somebody if you found it to be encouraging or interesting. If you have like a young high schooler that's considering going to college, maybe let them know. Don't get into student loan debt for something that might not even hire you. Maybe encourage them to do something that's like really practical or like STEM based. Like I think you can't go wrong with a mathematics degree, nursing, biology, science. And I know for a lot of people that sounds like very boring. Like we're not feeding the humanitarian side of society. We're just trying to live. Like if we're in a recession, if we're like the Great Depression where 25% of our population gets unemployed at any point, I would rather be somebody that knows I can get a job and has stability and actually has skills. And that's really what the key is. If you are somebody that is not employed right now and you're just a recent college graduate, work on getting some skills. Like actually start building out spreadsheets. Like what I've done that's worked for me is like when I go into interviews, I have a USB drive or printouts of reports that I've made. Like I'll have like really elaborate Excel formulas displayed so they can see I have the skills. Like I have the analytics know-how, I have the software know-how, I have the Excel experience, and you kind of want to display that to them. Like even if you don't have any actual job experience yet, find some data sets online, try to pick it apart, run some scenarios or simulations where you can show them like, yeah, I can do this job. Anyways, I believe in you. Hope you believe in yourselves. And yeah, we're seeing a change of the world, but don't lose hope. Just keep going and yeah, it'll get better.